Orc, the bardic paladin, who sings and plays again. He tells the tales of glory and weaves a magic story. He'll join you at your table and ask you to share a fable. Heroes of humble origin, villains who must be fought again. No matter their skill or prowess, the people in life are countless. So we pray you heed our request. Enjoy this tale of sidekicks and side quests.
Episode 89, Ashira, the Bearfolk Herbalist. Welcome to Sidekicks and Side Quests, the Dungeons & Dragons podcast that helps to put humans back into humanity and breathe life into your campaign NPCs with backstory and bravado. That's right, we're building a world, one character at a time. I am your host, Kurt Krenwelge, the Bardic Paladin, and I'll be joining Alyssa Visscher's table in the Levitating Platter. Hello everyone, and welcome to another exciting week's episode of Sidekicks and Side Quests, the best unofficial Dungeons & Dragons podcast, in my humbly biased opinion. Before I introduce my guest, I'd like to go ahead and give a shout out to my first sponsor, Plus One EXP. Tony Vicinda is the mastermind behind the mastercraft of Beard Balm's game design and community building. You know he's got beard balms named after all the basic stats from D&D, so get a can, apply it to your face, smell the sweet aroma and the sweet victory that comes along with increased strength, dexterity, charisma, and more. Beards and Beyond is the indie RPG that helped to launch this brand, but Tony's collaborated and developed several other projects that you can play this holiday season, including Repugnant, iToaster, Down We Go, the Santicide Squad, Through the Void, Vamp Nugula, and Brandstanding. If you support Plus One EXP either by buying something on their website or going to tonyplusone.itch.io, it all helps funnel into the Plus One Forward program, which seeks to support additional indie tabletop content creators to continue making awesome stuff. So I'd highly encourage you, go follow Tony and Plus One EXP on all the socials, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, in order to keep up with all the various projects that are being worked on, including interviews, one-shots, and actual plays of some of these other amazing TTRPGs. If you don't mind, go on over to plusoneexp.com, and when you see a box for an affiliate code discount savings, type in the word Randolph when you're buying a beard balm or a beard RPG in order to get some savings on your purchase at no extra cost to you. Again, that code is Randolph at checkout on the website plusoneexp.com. Well, after that exciting ad read from Plus One EXP, I'm happy to introduce our mystery contestant today. Hello, would you care to introduce yourself, tell us who it is that you are, and what is it that you do?
Hello, I'm Alyssa Visscher. I am a disabled neurodivergent mother of 4, and I'm also a freelancer in the community. I write articles for D&D Beyond occasionally, as well as, other random places, and I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, I think actually earlier today on Twitter I saw you got to write an article on playing an evil-aligned character. Is that correct?
Yes, that was a fun article to write.
Yeah.
Theory crafting about evil.
Oh, okay. And you also just published your first adventure on the DM's Guild. Is that correct?
Yes, I did. It's called Fate's Lingering Shadow. It has hit silver already and has gotten great reviews. So it's a little under $5. It's about exploration and, poking things with a stick, because that's what I like to do.
And mainly how you came upon my radar screen is that on Twitter, where I follow you and found your interactions, you like to go into these long threads and you like to really critically think about Dungeons and Dragons and explore these other areas and other topics, like you were mentioning earlier with your adventure is primarily focused on exploration and whether you're writing articles for D&D Beyond. And so what has that been like, and what kind of feedback and response have you received in taking to Twitter and sharing your thoughts, as it were, as dangerous as that can be sometimes?
Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm still reeling from the last year or so, because I was in a vehicle accident in June of 2020, shortly after the pandemic, which, already changed everybody's lives. And then I was in a vehicle accident and things were pretty not great in my life for a while. And so I was just sort of found outlet on Twitter. I've been on Twitter for a lot of years, but I started talking more and more about D&D. And so it just sort of snowballed from there. And, 2 years later, here I am writing and doing this now as a professional and getting, real jobs. So I really enjoy digging into topics and really trying to take aside all of the things that sort of distract sometimes and get into the meat of it, and to especially examine it from like the perspective of new folks, especially because the hobby has changed in its like makeup so substantially over the last few years. And so you sort of have your older folks who've been playing for so many years and are experts, and then you have new folks. And I just really like to try to bridge that gap and sort of go, what are these multiple perspectives and how do we bring them together? So I started on Twitter and now have sort of moved to other places, and my face is popping up in all kinds of places. And so it's been really great. It's been really fun, but I'm still, it's not like I woke up one day and was like, you know what, I'm going to be a professional writer and I'm going to write for Dungeons and Dragons. It just sort of happened. And it's been, just really great. No complaints.
Yeah. Well, I think this is, as we say in the States, a softball question. But do you currently, or have you ever played D&D before?
Yes. Obviously, yes, that is definitely the softball question. I actually started with Adventures League. And then I actually started DMing because we didn't have a lot. We had at this local game store, they were running a very sort of casual version of Adventures League. And we had this huge mix of like newbie players, completely new, and like older folks, and a lot of older folks who have like played second edition and haven't had groups to play with for a really long time. That sort of really interesting mix. And so I began DMing actually with only a few play sessions under my belt. And then sort of joined a couple of home groups, started my own. I've run a West Marches style campaign, which was a really fun way. It's a great way to get a lot of DM experience with a whole pile of different players. And now I've taken a break from DMing, but I am just beginning a Spelljammer campaign. I'm going to run the Light of Xerxes. I'm really excited about that because it's ridiculous and fun.
Yeah.
And I'm playing in a Wild Beyond the Witchlight campaign right now, bi-weekly online. So yes, all over the place.
Yeah.
All over the place.
Your enthusiasm is just reminding me of all your Twitter threads of when you're examining some of these books, like when you're going through the adventure books for Spelljammers, or you're going through, Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and you're just like, look at this is so cool. So, no, it's just good times and good vibes. Yeah.
I don't really do, so I mean, I'm autistic and I have ADHD. So when I do something, I really do it. But also ADHD, I don't do things that are not interesting to me. So if I'm, talking about something, it's because I'm really excited about it.
Yeah.
Always.
Well, this podcast is focused on the questions of sidekicks and side quests. So our first one of these questions is, who is your favorite sidekick? Whether they're from a RPG video game, maybe they're from a piece of literature, a movie, a television show, etc. And why is this character your favorite sidekick or NPC?
Oh my gosh. I was thinking about that today, and I thought that's just a really interesting question, because I think in some ways, so my favorite sidekick is probably going to be Gabrielle from Xena Princess Warriors. And this is so silly, but it's just, I think, one of my first introductions to sidekicks. I watched the show occasionally after school when I got home fast enough. I think I could only watch it on like early dismissal days or something silly like that. And I think I just loved how totally like strong she was. And this idea of, it was one of the first times I really got to see women being featured as being strong, competent superheroes, batteries, right? Just these really, really competent. And so I think like that just sticks out to me as this character who, even just as a sidekick, was so strong and competent, and but also like kind and well-rounded. And yeah, it's kind of funny. I don't really know why that has stuck so like strongly with me all these years. I haven't watched the show in like, I don't know, 2 decades probably. But that was my first, introduction really to this really strong female sidekick, and this female backing up this female, right? Like often when women are in sidekick roles, we're often backing up a man. So we don't get to be the main character, but we get to be the sidekick. Whereas here you had this dynamic of two, strong women who were friends and had a close relationship and were both just incredible characters in their own right.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I remember Xena Warrior Princess from my younger days. So yeah, that would have been the 90s going into the early
Yes.
2000s. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, that was just like, it was a cultural thing. It was just like, yeah, Xena Warrior
Yes.
Princess. Yeah.
And it was like a groundbreaking cultural thing at a lot of time in that there wasn't a lot of those things, sort of happening on TV. And we didn't have, I grew up in a tiny town, so there wasn't a lot of options for like cultural,
I didn't watch the show
phenomenon.
much myself, but I mean, I just remember it. And yeah, she had the circular ring thing and she'd like do a battle cry and she'd like,
Yes.
cut down villains and stuff like that and all that good stuff.
I want to be just like her when I grow up.
Yeah.
I looked more like Xena, but Gabrielle was she just looked great.
Yeah.
Total badass. Yeah.
And then same thing, or the other side of the coin, rather. What's been one of your favorite side quests, either from RPG, video game, movie, film, television, etc.? And why has it been one of your favorite side quests?
Yeah, I think I am really drawn to the side quests that are really like naturey and like foresty. So like a lot of like the video games I played, those are sort of the side quests that I actually play. A lot of the other ones I'll sort of just like skip, but like the ones that are like go into the deep forest and find these rare ingredients or visit my like hermit grandmother or that kind of a thing. Those are the ones that I love so much. I play a lot of druids. I love druids. I grew up in like a tiny town, but I grew up like on an acreage outside of town. So I was really like a country girl. So like, I just love the idea of like exploring the countryside. So I think like just those genres of side quests, just sort of like, they're the ones that I'm like, I'm going to go do that one, as opposed to like, oh, that one, that I just want to do the main quest. Those are
like
ones I want to do.
Forgive me, I haven't read it, but it may be like an Anne of Green Gables or something like
Yes.
that.
Yes, I read and watched much Anne of Green Gables. I'm also Canadian, so any media which depicts Canada,
In a positive way, yeah.
Around,
which 99% it is all positive, and then you get the occasional reference to the Blame Canada song, and everyone's like, oh yeah, that's right. Yep, got to blame Canada for something. Yep. And then to round out the personal interview section, what are you passionate about and why?
Like a lot of things. Can that just be my answer? No, I think I sort of alluded to it before, but I'm really passionate about, I think, connecting people and bridging and understanding. I believe strongly that, we are just as people, we're just these byproduct of and makeup of our individual experiences that are always so different and unique and interesting. And I'm a big proponent of trying to look at like a nuanced version of things and trying to look at like a wider picture always. And so I think that is just something that I'm really passionate about, is just bridging people and creating connections and creating different understandings and learning more. Because even, we talk about, I think often that, in this world of social media, our world is so much larger. We're so much more connected than we used to be. And yes, we are, but even still now, our perspectives are still so tiny. They're still so small. And there's so much, just so much beautiful, incredible things that other people have, and that, we would have no idea unless we sit down and have these conversations and get to know one another and ask deep questions. And I love just being connected with people that I would never connect with, like playing Adventurous League with a lot of these older generation guys who cut their teeth on second edition. Here I am, a young mom with coming into these these video game stores with, all this completely different people that I would never generally hang out with other times. And I learned so much from them. So I think that really lights me on fire, is just these ideas, understanding and learning new ideas and perspectives from just a wide variety of people.
Yeah.
Also druids. I
Also
really
druids.
like druids.
Well, I think we've learned a lot about our guest here, so I think it's a perfect time to segue into a segment that I like to call NPC creation. NPC creation is brought to you by you, the podcast audience, and our patrons from Patreon. Now is the time of the show where we would give a shout out to our comfortable patrons and above with a loud hurrah. So to you, Katie Downey, and my mom and dad, we say cheers. Again, this is for patrons who donate $2 or more a month. These three are my highest tier, wealthy level patrons. So that means they get to introduce an element of chance to our random tables here in NPC creation, which we might get to hear those responses used here today. If you want to join the cheapest podcast Patreon community out there, check the show notes below, go to my podcast website, or just go directly to patreon.com/sidekicks and side quests to find out more about our three tiers, $1 to $4 a month, and help us to expand our operations at the levitating platter in this demi-plane and worlds beyond. This is NPC creation. So in this segment, obviously, we make up an NPC, but the question is, are we going to roll the dice randomly to make up an NPC, or do you have an idea that you have and you want to flesh out, or are we doing a combo of both, or what are we thinking?
Possibly a combo. I was thinking about creating I said druids. I love druids. I was thinking about creating sort of an old woman, like gardener of eccentric things out in the wilderness. And I've got a bit of an idea. I want to sort of base her off of my current character,
Okay.
D&D character, but like an old version of her, because I think she's amazing and she's so full of personality and life that I think everybody should meet her in the pretend world.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like maybe the job or role of the character is already determined in the age range, but everything else you're kind of leaving up to chance, you think?
Sure.
Okay. All
Some
right.
things.
So if you've got your dice at the ready, virtual or otherwise, the very first question we have to ask ourselves is, what is the name of our character? And we generate names randomly by rolling a d20.
Ooh, let's do that. 13.
13. All right. Your answer was provided by previous guest, Leah Murray. Ashira.
I love that.
Ashira. Ashira. Okay.
Ashira.
All right. And unless you're settled on a particular ancestry of this character, if you want to generate one randomly, you can roll 2d10s or a d100, unless you already kind of know what Ashira ought to be.
No, I think there's lots of room. There's lots of room for different ancestry. This one. Let's go 86.
86. Okay, interesting. All right. So Bearfolk or anything else that's from Kobold Press. So I really like the Bearfolk that Kobold Press have developed for 5e, and so I've incorporated them into my game, so I decided they should be an option here. So Bearfolk, or if you're familiar with any of the other character ancestries that are present in Kobold Press, that is what an 86 will do.
I think Bearfolk fits very well in my player character's version of her. She's like a half dryad.
Okay.
But I feel like Bearfolk, works even better in this case.
Cool. All right. And so then the job or role in society that Ashira, the Bearfolk, has is that she's like this druid. She's like a gardener out just in the remote wilderness.
Yes, but not like a normal gardener. Like, if you ever open up the monster manual and you read like the plant entries and you're like, how did these plant creatures come into being?
Mm-hmm.
That is Ashira. She's a plant mom. And in some ways, plant mom it's not a figurative, it's a literal, She grows vine blights and corpse flowers and, living dandelions also.
Is she also making shambling mounds as well?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay, then. All right. So then the next thing we would determine would be the age range of the character. So I know you were saying older. Did you have a number in mind, or do you just want to kind of leave it vague as far as the
How old
age?
do bear folks live? What is the age range of those?
Bear folk reach maturity by age 11 and live for around 70 years. So comparable, I suppose, to average human lifespans.
But a little bit lower. Okay, so I would say she's probably in her 60s then.
Okay.
Um, like fairly old. Like you sort of look at her and you're like, I'm not entirely positive how many more years this woman is going to live. She sort of feels impossibly old. She moves a lot easier than somebody who generally is of her age. But yeah, definitely like mid 60s,
Okay. All
65.
right. So now we come to the question of describe the physical appearance of Ashira. So when you think Ashira, Bearfolk, plant mom in her 60s in the woods somewhere, what are you picturing?
Yeah, so I think that her fur is like pretty thinned out and has like patches, excuse me, bear patches, but like, but her bear patches are not, you don't see like their skin. She's got like little bits of like moss growing a little bit
Oh,
here and there, the occasional little mushroom that's like sprouting off of her, oh, like there's a little trail of ivy down her neck, like a little eccentric looking that way. I think her fur is probably like not white because that would look like a polar bear, but like
yeah. Are you imagining like
very
a
like
black bear or a grizzly?
yeah, imagining like a brown or a grizzly bear originally, but then sort of like very lightened and sort of like grayed out, patchy, with like an extra long snout,
Hmm.
quite a long snout, slightly like droopy ears. The top of her nose is like sort of like rubbed a little bit, so got rub marks, and her eyes are like quite squinty and just
Okay.
like a little bit
Her
droopy.
brow is like just kind of like melted
Yeah,
down almost.
yeah, exactly,
And,
exactly. But like, quite still like got a bit of a smile on her face. She looks a little like scary and like unapproachable, but if you
mhm.
get close, you're like, oh, okay, we'll be okay here.
I'm reading here and it's saying that bear folk grow to be about 7 feet tall when they reach adulthood, and they're massive and hulking in form, weighing around 400 to 500 pounds, though their size category is considered medium. So I know you were saying your original player character is a half giant, and now with the bear folk in mind. So, like, is she like hunched over, or is she like her full imposing height, or what are we
Yeah,
imagining?
I think that she's quite hunched over, has like a nice wooden, probably two wooden like walking sticks that she sort of hunches over quite. Her back is quite rounded and her head like sort of like stooped. Would have been quite tall when she stood up straight, but it has
Hmm.
been many years since that has happened. Little glasses. She's
Oh,
got to
little
have like
glasses on
little
the end of her.
glasses all the way at the end of her very long nose. Yeah.
Perfect.
That she has tied with like,
Oh,
some vine and some green like grasses and stuff so that they don't fall off her nose because they
right.
probably would.
Or she has to do the thing where she takes them off her snoot to like place them down so she can
Yes.
there we go. Clever. Yes. Like many a matron that we've probably seen in real life where they just have the glasses on the chain, they take them on and off and all that good stuff. So, all right.
Yes.
Well, if you had to describe Ashira with three adjectives, what three adjectives would you use?
I think I said eccentric. That fits. Like, if anybody's seen the Rings of Power, the new Rings of Power, the
Mhm.
wizard with like the bird nest in his hair. I can't
Oh,
remember
that's
the name of that
Radagast
guy.
from the Hobbit
Radagast.
trilogy.
Thank you. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. The Hobbit trilogy. That's right.
Yeah. So
I
that's
we
like
did
10
a
years old. So hopefully by now
yeah.
people have seen it.
we did a rewatch of a whole pile of them in the last like 3 weeks, so they're all sort of like mashed together in my
Yeah.
brain. Right, a little bit like that, where you sort of like look at them and you're like, huh, yeah, eccentric, very
Okay.
eccentric, but also I think like tenacious, like this sort of stubborn tenacity. There's no way that you can grow sentient plants without a hefty dose of tenacity. And I think given that she's old, I'd say like blunt, like, I find like as I age, I give a lot less care as to what people think. And my own grandmother is extremely blunt. I'm looking at my own future, I swear, every time I look at her. But I imagine Ashira as like, she feels very strongly that she has earned the right to say whatever she wants. And she will give you the honest truth, whether you wanted to hear it or not.
The next thing that we're going to roll for is, of course, we like to give our NPCs cool stuff. So, what's a valuable item, a piece of lore, a secret, or an ideal or concept that Ashira would ascribe to? So, this is a combo where you get to roll a d4 for the category and then a d6 for the particular thing.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3.
3. Okay, so this is going to be a secret that she possesses. So now you roll a d6 and we'll figure out what's the secret that Ashira has.
2.
2. Okay, your answer was provided by our Patreon supporter, Goblin Katie, aka Katie Downey. Your mother was a wizard of nefarious renown. You try to avoid people finding out she's your mother. So yeah, now that we kind of know this information about that, how does that affect Ashira, I suppose, as a character? What does that mean for her?
I think that's probably why she ended up sort of in the line of work that she did. She knows a lot about magic that like she shouldn't know. She learned stuff from her. Like nobody should know how to create shambling mounds, okay? Like that should just I feel like that's what she has all this information, this magical information that, she shouldn't know from watching her mother, but, didn't want to stay in towns or cities or anything like that. She's out in the wilderness a little bit by herself, away from any prying eyes or, nosy questions. And she can do her own thing with the knowledge that she has, but for much less nefarious reasons. I don't think that she necessarily feels like she has to like make up for, her mother's nefarious reputation, her mother of ill repute. But she does, I think, feel that she, has lived with that for a long time and doesn't want, I think in the back of her mind, there's always a little bit of a fear that she might turn rogue. So now that she's quite a bit older, she feels quite proud of herself that she hasn't, while still going, there's still time left, I'm not dead yet.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of how this secret of hers kind of shapes her character, but also if you're going to deploy this character in your game, what kind of implications that means for your adventure, for your world, because we have an evil Bearfolk wizard that was going around doing all sorts of shenanigans, and now her offspring is, just recluse in the woods and doing her own plant mom experiments on nature, maybe, yeah, just like trying to give back to nature because of what her mom took away from nature or something like that.
Yeah, maybe. And right, like maybe her mom is like, depending on the story, right, could be connected to like werebears or something. There's probably lots of, room in the story for something like that. Somehow Ashira never got that stick, but ended up with a little bit like, sometimes when I'm DMing or when I'm playing, right, you sort of have your knowledge checks essentially categorized, right? You've got your history, right? Your nature, your arcana, and that sort of stuff. And right, wizards have got this sort of arcana and history, right? That sort of fits in their character archetypes. Whereas I think this, sort of connected to druids, you sort of have your arcana as it pertains to nature, right? And I like a lot of the games that I run, nature is powerful. Nature itself is incredibly powerful. You've got the powers of the elementals, you've got these huge raw powers. So I think that her mother has had information from that and had things to do with that were then taken to the more arcane side. And what Ashira did, it was wanting to more ground it back into nature, trying to live life in balance and recognizing what is the role that magical plants can play in the ecosystem? What is the role that magic plants that are not like literal living plants, but let's say like arcane ingredients or alchemical ingredients or anything like that? How can we keep the magic and the knowledge of those things, but ground them into a sort of natural cycle as opposed to self-serving, egotistical power?
you were describing that, it was making me think of, since you brought up Radagast and, Rings of Power and the Lord of the Rings and Tolkien and all this, it made me think of like if you contrasted like the mom character was someone like a Saruman, and then she's like this Radagast character. So they're like, because Saruman became tempted with power and all this stuff and
Yeah.
industrialization, and I'm just gonna rip up nature and Isengard and make it into this factory in this horrible place. And then you have Radagast and the other kinds of wizards that are like, no, like we're here to protect Middle Earth and like make sure it's all cool, and then inspire the Ents
Yeah.
to rise up and smash Isengard and all that stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's sort of the idea of recognizing, that you exist within an ecosystem and not just at the top of a food chain. You're just going to do whatever you want because you're the powerful wizard with all the stuffs. But trying to be integrated into a sort of, larger than one person perspective, although maybe with less bird poop on her hair than Radagast.
And then the final thing we like to make sure we leave our NPCs with is a side quest. Everyone's got to have a side quest to offer the player character. So what's going to be a side quest or a mission that Ashira is willing to offer the player characters to go and do on her behalf? So you can roll for this randomly with a D12, or if you're inspired, you can just kind of come up with your own side quest.
Let's see what the D12 gives us. Also,
yeah, and maybe we can weave it into something. So
yeah. Also because D12s are my favorite dice, and I never ever pass up an opportunity to roll a D12. 8.
Okay, interesting. So your answer was provided by previous guest Brian Rose. Deliver a love letter. Thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think so. First of all, I think that there are tons of obvious other side quests that, fetch and carries and fight this thing, collect, an owlbear egg because she could use it, but she's no longer strong enough to fight an owlbear. So there's all those kinds of really obvious, like there's so much low-hanging fruit there, right? Go collect some special mushrooms that, her weak knees, et cetera. But I really like this as being an offbeat, unexpected one, especially if you can sort of gain her trust in some way, because I think she's old, she's been living alone, she's nearing the end of her life, and I think it's natural for all of us in a situation like that to sort of be looking at those missed opportunities, or the things that you never said, or the life you could have lived, or the opportunities you passed up, etc. So I think a love letter is great. I think a love letter to somebody that she loved years ago and never connected, maybe like a fellow herbalist that she met as a kid or something like that, maybe another druid, because #druids for life.
Yeah, or I was going to say, is it someone who maybe used to apprentice for her mom, and then when the final straw was broken and she was like, oh, I can't be associated with my mom anymore, and now she's thinking like, oh, but that guy that I left behind, he was really cute, or whatever.
Yeah, or maybe somebody that saw her mom for who she was before Ashira did, and so maybe they had a falling out, while Ashira still thought, the world of her mom still had, those sort of naive rose-colored glasses on, and so they got close, and then it ended in part because they had more of a backbone at that time, or were more aware of what her mom was doing. And then sort of like the big fight that nobody speaks about, and they lost touch. But over the last number of years, Ashira sort of pondered that longingly and sad love. Yeah.
So is it another Bearfolk, or is it another type of individual in the nearby city, or is it like another continent away? Or, are we going to just kind of leave that up to whoever decides to use Ashira to kind of invent that? Or do you kind of want to leave some ideas?
I always love to leave a little bit of wiggle room, but I don't want to throw anybody to the wolves, like a little bit of structure. Maybe not continental, but maybe I think that I don't envision her living just on the on the city outskirts. She lives deep in the forest, And so maybe somebody who lives a couple of cities away, that would be at this point a very difficult trek for her because she's old. So I think in a lot of ways there's lots of options depending on the story, because sometimes the whole deliver a letter doesn't really make sense because just go deliver it yourself, But she's old.
Yeah.
She doesn't have the physical capacity to even go like.
She can't send the shambling mound to go deliver the letter.
Really
the shambling
can't.
mound's going to get attacked.
They are really not reliable in that way. So yeah.
What are you imagining the reward is going to be for the side quest if the players successfully deliver the letter like they're supposed to, and they return to her to let her know, like, hey, we did it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of actually options there because, I feel like she could she's like a walking library of a particular kind of knowledge. So if there's some deep lore that the characters need to know, or some answers that don't make sense, or like old mysteries, there's so much potential for that. She's also, if there's anybody in the group who's got alchemy or magic items, or like, I feel like she's got a whole cellar full of like keto mint ointments and healing potions and other potions, but also like super esoteric, like magical ingredients, right? Like sort of like the very rare, like slash legendary ingredients to make all kinds of things. So if there's any sort of reward in that case, I think that would totally go. Of course, if anybody wants to apprentice with her for a while or share that kind of knowledge, that would be something that she could potentially do. And I also feel like she has this like room in the house full of like other random things that do not fit any other thing. Like I feel like she has also collected over the years like random things from other travelers that don't really necessarily make sense, like your occasional like tinkering thing, or like weird gemstones, or like awkward books, or like whatever. I feel like you could roll on the most awkward and weird and random like trinket table, and like that would be her kitchen.
And then if the players fail to deliver the letter, they never return to report on it. What's going to be the consequence of that? Is there going to be a rise in plant attacks?
I think that she would be very careful. Like any sort of consequence with her would be something that would not touch or affect other people. I think that she would be very cognizant of sort of like innocent lives and innocent people. But I actually feel like she probably knows like a little bit of like hag type stuff, and probably like as a precautionary measure, gets maybe not a fingernail, because I think she'd have a hard time doing that surreptitiously, but is able to pop a hair off and sort of.
Oh yeah, she can have the plants totally when they're
Yes.
first getting there. The plants are just secreting away like a hair or something like that.
Or the dandelion just sort of goes and from behind her and and grabs it. I don't think she does like a deep, like really, really bad curse, but I think the kind of like mayor's socks always manage to find the puddle to get wet in, and like those kind of really, really inconvenient and potentially dangerous things. But I don't think she's it. Yeah, I feel like a low-level hag curse would probably be something that she would do if it was something like, if the failure was something like on the letter, something that important. If you're going to do it and you muck up on that, if it's just a random other little side quest, I don't think she'd be quite as. I think she at her age is used to people failing, and sees that as a thing that just happens in life. But the letter, I think if you fail on that, I think you're probably getting a low-level hag curse on you.
So does Ashira have a particular accent or language that she uses? Are there any idiosyncrasies in how they act or speak?
She has a Dutch or German accent. That is what she has. And she will slap her leg or slap a table to like for emphasis, like or that sort of thing. But a sort of a guttural accent for sure.
So what impact has Ashira made on the world? How has Ashira shaped the local area?
I think that's really interesting, because now we have this character whose like mother dabbled in this dark magic, and now who's like hid in the area, and she's like growing strange plants, including like living ones. Like that has to affect an area, like this character doing these things. So I feel like there's probably like I feel like there's got to be rumors and stories in the area, like and like these conflicting like legends about like, well, I heard, and my great grandmother says that if she looks at you, you're gonna turn into a plant or like
So kind of like
whatever.
Baba Yaga stories or something like that.
Yeah, there's got to be, like, don't go into the deep dark woods because the dangerous witch lives there, very very sort of stereotypical of that. But also I think probably hushed tones about like the family, like like a little bit of like nobody really talks about that, and especially if there's like Bearfolk communities like in the general area, probably a lot of like we just like we don't talk about Bruno style, right?
No. Yeah.
No. Yeah, I'm gonna be singing that song tonight now. Yeah, there's got to be these sort of like local legends and stories, and like warning stories, like that parents, right? If if you don't clean up your room tonight, I'm gonna put you out, and Ashira is gonna get you, something, right? Like,
right. They're like, oh no, we'll do everything you ask. Yes, parents, of course.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So what are the goals and motivations of Ashira as a character?
I think that probably she also has a bit of a goal and like motivation, like in addition to all this sort of like old age stuff and like lost love and obviously continuing her work as long as she can. I think that there's also a part of her that regrets not having someone to pass her knowledge down to. And so I think that if there's any characters like in the party that, are druids or have like a rangers or have like a nature background or are trained in like medicine or nature, or herbalism or alchemy or anything like that, I think that there's a part of her that would really like to be able to pass some of that stuff along, and teach that. I think she would love to have a bit of a like apprentice, for just like short times, as long as she's still alive, to spend a little bit of downtime, if you can get past her, all the crazy stories and all the, the scary legends about her.
Yeah, so kind of like a Yoda figure almost.
Yeah, actually, yeah, a little bit like that, but that would be sort of like probably a side of her that would sort of come with building a little bit of trust or working with her. Probably see that a little bit later on. Probably not first conversation or first 5-minute stuff.
All right. Well, we've learned so much about Ashira now that I think it's time we throw her into a random encounter. This random encounter is brought to you by Reaper Miniatures. They've been Texas Titans of the tabletop industry since 1994. They're right here in DFW, and they've got an amazing warehouse and game store. They make everything from paints to gaming accessories, and they stream on Twitch and YouTube with tutorials and interviews. Whatever system you're running, whatever game you're playing, Reaper has a mini for you. Every time you shop with them and spend $40, $50 on a purchase, especially coming up here to the holiday season, Reaper is going to throw in a cool new mini of the month. And especially around the Christmas season, it's very gingerbread, candy canes, and Krampus sorts of miniatures that you might get. So all the more reason and incentive to go shop with them online. Of course, you've heard me talk about the Reaper Miniatures Bones 6 Tales from the Green Griffin Kickstarter they did. That's already wrapped up, but if you want to get involved and get some sweet minis, be sure to go to the Kickstarter and join in through the backer kit so you too can still get a truckload of minis when they get released in the next year or so. And of course, if you want to donate to a worthy cause and help out, and you want to get a cool mini all at the same time, be sure to check out the Nightingale Bird Bard mini that they've created. It costs $9.99, and of that, $7.50 gets allocated towards UNICEF relief efforts towards the conflict in Ukraine. So If you want to visit my website or go check out the show notes below, you can use my referral code link when you go to shop with Reaper in order to help support Sidekicks and SideQuests at the very same time. By clicking that link on my website, it helps to track the traffic that our show directs towards Reaper Miniatures. The more traffic we send their way, the more that our Texas powers combine. And again, I have to thank Reaper Miniatures for all the gift cards that they've tossed my way, especially this holiday season. If you're looking for something cool to give your friends and family, why not give them the gift of a cool new mini? And you can use my link to go get that cool new mini. So again, go check out the link below and be sure to follow them on all the social medias: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube. All right, so this is the segment where we have a random encounter, a little role play, a little vignette with the character that we've made here today. So obviously, I think Alyssa would do a wonderful job being Ashira, hashtag druid life. But the question becomes, who am I going to be in this scene? Are we doing like a flashback scene with like her mom? Are we doing the flashback with like the lost love? Or am I going to be one of my podcast adventurer characters stumbling upon Ashira and taking on the side quest? Or what kind of scene are you interested in kind of showcasing her off? Maybe I'm one of the plant creatures. Who knows? It's whatever kind of scene you're interested in.
Oh gosh, there's just so many great possibilities there, isn't there? I think you can pick.
Oh, you want me to pick?
Apparently, who do you want to be? Apparently, I can't make this decision tonight.
Okay. Okay. So if you want me to be one of my adventurer characters, we got 5 to choose from. I'll try and list them off real quick. So we got Duncan. He's the happy-go-lucky adventurer for hire. We've got Sonia, the warrior woman who multi-classed to paladin. We've got Korak, the lawful evil arcane trickster roguish dwarf. We've got Chrisley, who is the shy herbalist botanist wood elf druid, who then multi-classed into cleric. And then we have a new one, Orion, who is a astral elf illusionist wizard.
I mean, the outdoors one is obvious, but a new astral character also sounds interesting. So either one of those two sounds great.
Okay. Do you want to roll for it and see which one?
Sure. Evens or odds? Evens is the druid guy. Druid. Yeah, it's an old growth forest with ginormous wide trees, the kinds of which we don't have enough of anymore. There's lots of walking room between the trees, but they tower and they droop. And so the whole sort of forest area is quite dark. There is an opening in the glade where the sunlight sort of streams ahead. And you can see sort of through the large trees, the gentle breeze. You think it's maybe the gentle breeze, but you're not entirely positive, because as you get closer, you realize that the plants that you think are swaying in the breeze may in fact be swaying gently of their own accord. There is a home that is built of like an assortment of natural woods and fibers and like plants woven in there, but it's not like a log cabin or like a wood building. It is like an eclectic array. Like I think we all have like somebody in our community or our family who like builds things out of 18,000 different parts. It's like that, but a house. There is this sound of leaves moving that doesn't sound just like leaves. It's almost like it has an undertone of like weird whisperings and subtle clicks and the occasional like bird call that doesn't totally sound like a bird. And you see sort of in the center of this clearing with these all manner of different plants growing. And not all of them are green. There are some very obvious plants that are recognizable, but there are varieties of plants that you've never seen, and like varieties of like plants that you have seen, but this variety you haven't, like seeing bright purple corn stalks, etc. And sort of in the middle of that, you see this figure sort of stooped into the ground, digging and muttering under her breath as let's do a dandelion, like a a 2-foot tall dandelion is handing her like tools back and forth.
And so after her last adventure with the collector, Chrisley was feeling the call to go back into nature. And so she started wandering. So she kept wandering and wandering. And she eventually found herself in this old growth forest. And so, with her now also serving the living memory, at times she's found herself just, it almost seems like as if she can trance while she's awake. So she can walk like these long distances and cover these vast expanses of land and stuff like that. And before long, it's like she snaps out of a trance as she's like, subconsciously taking in all the stuff so that way she's able to reproduce the art later because she's out here trying to collect information on nature. And it's like she stops her trance at the right time as she comes to the clearing and she looks out and she's perplexed for a second because she thinks like surely this is like I've somehow ended up back in the Feywild, but she takes a moment to get her bearings and she's like, well, no, actually, these are not. And so she's beginning to softly mutter to herself and she's like pointing at things and she's speaking in Druidic. So she's like, this is what that plant is, but then this is that plant. And she's getting more giddy and excited. And so she's just walking through and she's like looking at things and like indicating to plants, and it's almost like the plants are responding to her and they seem to like welcome her. I would hope and I suppose, unless the plants are like immediately hostile to anyone that's not Ashira.
No, I don't think they're hostile immediately. I think the plants are a little bit ambivalent, but at the sound of Druidic, I think Ashira's, you can't see it, but her forehead sort of furrows a little bit because she's maybe not sure if she's hearing things. She doesn't hear very well anymore. And then when she hears it for the second time, she goes, "Hey, what's that? Who did?"
And just, hello, and so she'll come closer and she'll approach Ashira. She keeps a berth and she is very deferential to elders, and so she'll like do a very polite bow. And in Druidic, she'll continue and she'll say, "Oh, is this your ward, your glade that you protect and guard?"
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
She sort of just like nods and just she looks a little confused, like, yeah. And
well, hello. Well, my name is Chrisley. I'm from the Woad, and I'm observing and documenting nature. And I thought for a moment I had wandered into the Feywild, but no. Last I checked, we're here in the prime material plane.
yeah, no, you're right. You're right. This is the actual material plane. What are you doing here?
Oh,
She like leans forward a little bit and sort of like waves one of her canes sort of emphatically at her.
oh, and so Chrisley takes a moment to stop and like you see her focus on you, and you can see her eyes begin to shift like a bunch of different shades of color, and she like as freezes for a moment, and then she like snaps to, and then she's like, "Oh, you're one of the Bearfolk. Wow, I don't think I've met one yet, but wow." And then she begins to say things like about Bearfolk culture, like this is she said out loud like this is her first time meeting you, but at the same time she's like saying like everything that she would know, like the most intimate things about Bearfolk culture.
Yeah, well, I am not really much of a Bearfolk in that way. I do. She slaps her knee. I do my own thing. Yeah.
Forgive me, sorry. You'll see she gestures to a grimoire that she has on her hip and she pulls it up and she'll say, "Sorry, one of the gifts of living memory that I am now also a cleric for allows me to have a vast wealth of knowledge at my fingertips, as it were." And she chuckles. And then she'll look around and she'll say, "This is just, it's just a very lovely, beautiful place." And she'll maybe notice like she's getting impatient or like just more agitated with Chrisley's otherwise demeanor. She'll be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm being rude, but do you need help with something? Can I be of service to you?"
Well, I mean, maybe. She sort of like narrows her eyes and gives her like a really good hard look, and she sort of like leans back a little and crosses her arms, and you go, "So You really have no idea. You didn't, you just happened to come here. You like knowledge, but like for what?
Oh, well,
Who are you? Tell me about your actual self before I decide if I want to like entrust you to my precious plants and my space, because there are many people who have come through these doors and y'all are not always very good.
and so immediately it's almost like she, it's like she's a little kid again, and so she just begins to tell you the whole story of like she's Chrisley, she's from the Woad, she was chosen to go out into the world and explore it and document it, and then she met Pathos Anthropoi of the Zotani, and so he was the last priest of the Zotani, and so now that's why she's this cleric, and now she has this access to living memory, and so she's trying to like do her part to like still do her original charge, but also she's trying to do her part to help like preserve and build up the Zotani culture and religion and people once again. So maybe she goes really really fast, but she tries to like download all that information to you as quickly and as deferentially as she can.
I think while Chrisley is talking, like the little dandelion is sort of like behind Ashira, but was like poking its little like yellow flower head like between her knees and around, and like it pops up on her shoulder and like looks above her shoulder. The dandelion, I think, is very excited to meet Chrisley. The dandelion is a little more impressed
Oh, okay.
Than Ashira is.
Yeah, and so then she'll finish her story and be like, and that is my tale, and I hope I'm worthy of your trust now, my elder.
Well, you strong? You can like lift things.
Yes, and you look at her and you see she's like outfitted. She's got a mixture of different scraps of gear, whether it's hide or metals or other things, and so she's a competent adventurer, and she's like, yeah, if you manual labor, sure, I can help.
Well, excellent. So there's a little cliff. You follow the stream behind my house, and there's a little cliff. If you follow it, nice clag of rocks, and in there is a cave. And if you go into the back of the cave, there's actually a family of flare snails that live there. And I need myself some of the flare snail goo, because they sort of like eat the ground, right? And then they sort of leave a nice little shiny iridescent thing. And do you have any idea how excellent a fertilizer that is?
And she'll quickly sit there and her eyes flash, and she'll be kind of like a matrixing of like, I know kung fu. She's like, oh yes, very potent, yes indeed.
My supply is running a little bit low, and well, I'm not as young as I used to be, and I'm not as spry as I used to be, and also there's occasionally some owl bears that live close there, and so they are not always as nice and as happy to see me as I am to see them. So I could use some help there. And then also I have a number of trees that need to be replanted and repotted. So you can dig some holes. And she just like begins to go and like list off this like laundry list of things. Like,
Okay.
it's basically, she starts off with like that and then goes into like a large honey-do list, basically.
Okay. Chrisley's gonna take an opportunity to roll an insight check. And as she's listening to her, this is like the cleric thing coming into play. And so as she lets her finish, we'll say she rolls really well because of the fact of living memory and all this stuff. We'll say she does extremely well on her insight check. And she'll be like, but pardon me, ma'am, but I think you need help with something else. I mean, sure, I can help with all these other things, but that's not really what's weighing on your heart right now, is it?
Ashira sort of like stops and sort of goes silent and looks at Chrisley for in silence, like 1 or 2 seconds too long, slightly uncomfortable, and then sort of sighs and like hobbles to a fallen like log that's been sort of made into a nice little bench and sort of carved nice for her old woman body, and sits down there and sort of sighs and just sort of looks out into the forest and the trees for a minute or two. And she will, I think, I rolled an 18. So yes, she will actually pull out one of the letters from her side satchel. She keeps it on her all the time, which is incredibly impractical. And yet she does it anyways because, she's never sure when she's going to die. And she certainly would like to make sure that somebody finds that, eventually and hands it off. So she doesn't want to leave that chance. That's always on her. And she pulls it out and sort of holds it in her lap and fidgets with the corner of the sealed envelope for a couple of seconds and says, have a letter that, well, probably should have written it 20 years ago or 30 years ago. But, I was very stubborn in those years. And then I blinked and now I'm old because time, it just goes by so fast sometimes. Yeah, you keep that in mind, eh? You think you're so young and spry now, but just you wait.
Chrisley will internally monologue think to herself of how her first 100 or so years has been, but she's not going to say anything out loud in front of this elder.
Ashira doesn't even notice. She is generally very insightful and perceptive, but is too lost in her own thoughts and emotions at the moment, and says, and well, I have this letter to somebody very important. But I need to, if I give it to you, you actually have to deliver it, eh?
Oh, of course.
I need to know that you not just take the letter and disappear with it, because if something happens to it and it doesn't go, and it's not with me and it's not with him, then we have a problem, eh?
Yes, of course.
Can you be trusted? Sort of
most assuredly, yes.
Intent.
Yes, and Chrisley's being completely 100% serious and genuine.
Ashira sees that with her naturally high perception and insight as a druid, and you can see her body just relax just a little bit, and she sort of sinks a little bit deeper into the log, reaches an arm out and says, his name is Alex, and he is a gardener at the university. At least he was. As far as I know, he's still the gardener at the university. Yeah. If you are very nice to him, he will tell you all kinds of very, very nice stories. He is a much better storyteller than me. Yeah. Yeah. But you actually must go, and you must come back to me and let me know that you actually did. Okay?
Yes, of course.
Do not get lost on the way.
Well, I can't. And she motions at the grimoire and holds it open a page. And you can see on this particular page, there's an image of her, showing her perspective of her walking through the woods. And then it shows her emerging into the glade. She's like, I can't forget. It's part of me now. Closes the book, puts it back to her side.
Ashira mutters underneath her breath about young kids these days and their fancy books, and they can't even get lost. And what else are they going to come up with?
Okay, and so then from there, she promises to come back and do everything else that she needs. Chrisley will say it's good motivation, for her to want to come back and help out with all these chores and various other things she needs help with. But she'll take the letter, and then she will return back to the Royal University and go deliver the letter.
And Ashira just sort of nods and finishes off and says, yeah, you do that, and you show yourself to be competent and trustworthy and loyal, and then I will have some things to tell you and to show you, and you can write in your book that nobody else knows. No one else in the whole world knows some of the things that I know. You don't even know what you don't know, young one.
And scene. All right. Well, we just had the random encounter. So what did you think of the experience of getting to be Ashira?
Yeah, she's really fun. My character that she's sort of loosely based off of her name is Zuri, and she's a spore druid. But I like Ashira even more. I think I'm definitely gonna yoink her and put her in a game in probably an area. I'm gonna build an entire forest around her, I think.
That's what we love on this podcast. People to get inspired and then be like, all right, well, I'm going to go ahead and put this character in my game and build a whole mythology now. All right. Well, we're starting to get into final thoughts of the show. So, any other concluding thoughts or feedback or critiques or anything like that, I always, this is the part to voice those, I suppose.
This was a lot of fun. This is so great. I will say that NPCs and side quests they're not my forte in that I tend to easily forget about them. I think as a dungeon master, I tend to focus on locations because I love exploration. And then suddenly I'm like, oh no, I don't have any people here. And then I have to sort of backtrack. Or if I'm the DM, I always forget to run my NPCs. They're the first thing that flies out of my head when I'm thinking about all the other stuff. That's the first plate that I drop is the NPCs. And yet they're so much fun. I love building them and I love using them. So something that I am learning to do, that's like my weakest link as a DM, even though it's one of the best parts. So, there's always room for learning and growing and getting better at things. And so I love this. This is just a great exercise.
Well, I'm just trying to do my humble part to, give to the community and, have everyone be able to have a whole rotation or a whole catalog of NPCs that they could get, and they can tweak them however they need them. So if you need a plant lady for your forbidding forest, but you don't want to make it a hag or anything like that, just drop Ashira into your game and let the players be razzle-dazzled with her. The very final moments, the thing I like to do is always leave the microphone, the stage, the platform, the soapbox to my guests. So whatever you've got to plug, where can we find you online? Where can we buy all your great stuff? And all that sort of kind of stuff. And if there's any passions or causes or anything like that, let us know.
Fantastic. So I'm Alyssa Visscher. I am on Twitter at Alyssa Visscher. And yes, my name has got a couple of extra letters because I do have a Dutch background, Visscher. I swear Dutch just puts extra letters in there just for funsies. I don't know, but that is my first platform. You will also find me on writing for D&D Beyond occasionally. I've got a really fun article coming up in a couple of weeks that I'm just in the middle of writing on, and it is very relevant to characters and NPCs. So definitely check that out. I am on the DM's Guild, as we talked about. My first adventure, Fate's Lingering Shadow, has gotten to silver and has gotten really, really great reviews and feedback so far. And I am currently also in the middle of writing, this is going to be such a fun adventure. I'm writing an adventure for at Zipper on Disney. He's got a big YouTube channel, and we're writing an adventure for him loosely based on Jack and the Beanstalk. So you have to climb up a beanstalk. There's a family of definitely not Care Bears. They're the Caring clan of a species of small bears that live in clouds and drive cloud vehicles. It is definitely distinct completely from the Care Bears. And then you've got to go into a giant's castle and find the loot and try to escape the giant and go home. So look for that. Hopefully in December is when it should be releasing. Other than that, I would love to hear from you, especially if you use Ashira in your games. Come and let me know at Alyssa Visscher on Twitter, and tell me all about your NPCs, your exploration, and your side quests, because I think the best creativity is everybody else in the community has, I swear, better ideas than those of us who are on the microphone. So come and share them with us, because we need them just as much as you need ours.
Awesome. Well, Alyssa, thank you so much for your time, and can't wait to have you back on the show to make more NPCs.
Thank you so much. It was great to be here.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Sidekicks and Side Quests. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast through Apple Podcast, Google Play, Spotify, and Overcast, or feel free to save the RSS feed to use the app of your choice. Visit our website, sidekicksandsidequests.com, for links, write-ups of the NPCs, and to learn more about the show and the guests who have been on it. To stay up to date and interact via social media, you can follow the podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Reddit by searching for SideKQ Podcast. I would love to talk D&D and showcase your fan art, stories of how you used our NPCs, discussions, and commentary. If you would like to hail the bard, simply send an email to sidekicksandsidequests@gmail.com. To help this show be the resource it's meant to be, I ask that you please leave a review on iTunes to help spread the word and share our podcast with your friends and family. Whether you're a veteran player or an aspiring dungeon master, or you've never played Dungeons & Dragons before, there's something here for everyone, and I want to hear about it. And finally, after 2 years, I've decided to open a Patreon for Sidekicks and Side Quests. If you love this podcast and you want to help us grow and expand our operations, I would appreciate it if you would go on over to patreon.com/sidekicks and side quests. No matter your lifestyle expenses, we have wonderful rewards at every level of Patreon membership tier. Your name on the wall of the levitating platter, a loud hurrah on the podcast, or the possibility to introduce an element of chance to NPC creation. Sidekicks and Side Quests is unofficial fan content permitted under the fan content policy, meaning I'm not approved or endorsed by Wizards. Portions of the materials used are property Wizards of the Coast, copyright Wizards of the Coast, LLC. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you at the pub next time.
Bar to rock on 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sidekicks and Side